So, when's the patch coming? It's been 2 weeks since the release candidate. Tupper was like, it's imminent. Where's the patch?
But VRChat updated last week.
What do you mean VRChat updated last week? Boy howdy, this is Shani Merst here. Another VRChat patch. Was last week, I was busy, entertaining VR chatters. So, not necessarily you, just other. But anyway, this is a new patch. New, full of amazing, cool things. Let's talk about it seriously. This is VRChat patch 2019.3.1. It was released on the 22nd of August, only a couple days late. The big stuff, let's get through the big stuff right now, and that is the improved behaviors in minimum displayed performance rank system. So if you recall correctly, or if I recall, if you go to safety and you go to performance options, avatar performance, remember when you could set your minimum displayed performance rank? I have it set to poor, but this has been totally revamped, seriously revamped. So let's talk about it. Oh, wow, that looks appropriate. I think they might have fixed another bug. Sweet. So the minimum displayed performance rank system now, when you set to a setting like poor or very poor or medium, it only targets the things that are bad. So let's take Dudeberry, for example, because he's awful. And let's look at these performance thingamajiggers. So Dudeberry here has a little over 70,000 polygons, and it can't do any performance filtering on that because there's only a couple things that it can't do, and that's polygons and bounds and a couple other things. But if, for example, Dudeberry had more than 32 dynamic bone colliders, instead of just marking him as awful and just blocking his avatar, it'll just get rid of the dynamic bone colliders. Or if there's, too many, I don't know if it does skin mesh renderers, but if he has too many animators, it'll just cut them out. You can't do anything about bones, but if he has too many lights, it'll just cut them out. So now you still see people without seeing the bad parts of their avatar, which is cool, which is actually really cool, which is exactly what the original version should have been, which is why this is a V2. So cool. That is pretty freaking awesome. There's also a lot of other things like the SDK, but we'll get into the SDK in a little bit. Another really cool feature of this patch is that avatars load instantly now, 20 million times faster than they did. So now when you go into VRChat and you want to, see your friends, you actually see your friends. You don't see a loading avatar for 15 seconds. It's fantastic. Totally, just brilliant. It's great. A couple other changes, your grip keys, especially if you have the index, you're going to notice this a lot. But I think it's for it's for everybody. It's for the index, it's for Vive wands, it's for Oculus controllers. They essentially grip now, and you push your grip. It doesn't just put you in a seat 20 million miles away. If I was reaching for a seat right over there and I were to push grip last patch, I would sit right down, even though I wanted to make a fist. Oh, there's an airplane. So now you can use your triggers. Actually, you have to use your triggers, and then you sit properly. For other things too that require interaction, like turning on a mirror or setting up your T-pose for full body tracking, stuff like that. So trigger is the new grip. Wow, that was awful. Anyway, they also updated bindings to invalidate the old bindings on the index. So you might have to update your index Steam VR binds to get the latest version of the binds, which also might break some of your customizations like I was showing in the index video, which I will put up in this side over here. There's a card. Anyway, the announcement screen was changed. If you found a bug once a long time ago, or maybe even just very recently, when you were loading into a world, it would say, this is an announcement. No longer. Now it actually has something relevant. Or maybe it doesn't happen at all. Whatever, they stopped yelling. That's what matters. Like I said, for minimum displayed performance rank, bounds will make you very poor, but with this new system, if your bounds are all wrong, right? If you have a snail's line renderer, right? Or writing tool, right? To hide that writing tool, what it does is it shoots the renderer way up in the sky, and that's part of your bounds. If your bounds are too big, like way over like 3 meters by 3 meters or whatever it is, it's going to mark you as very poor. But nothing can be done by the minimum displayed performance ranking system to lower those bounds because, that you can't. You need to understand what's going on with the avatar to be able to lower the bounds. And it's kind of more like a robotic system, right? So what it's doing is just doing nothing because bounds really don't matter that much for performance. But you really shouldn't have huge bounds unless you're using it for a specific purpose. Yeah, now you have the option to, in the settings, to not show community labs worlds anymore, which is great if you don't care for community labs. But if you're watching this, then you probably also watch my other series, literally on community labs, called Lab Worlds Weekly, and I present a whole bunch of really good community lab worlds, which actually go public very quickly because they're actually good. So, I mean, you don't have to have lab worlds on if you don't want, but if you watch my show, then you probably are interested in lab worlds. So I would leave that on, but that's just me. They also added Visual C++ 2015 executables. So in case you haven't installed a game in the last 10 years, now you get them. Don't worry about it. It literally doesn't matter. There was a patch just after this patch which stopped a lot of excessive logging, even more than the original patch did, because there was kind of a bug and it was just producing logs and filling up people's hard drives. So that was rolled in. So you should see a lot smaller log files now if you care about log files, which the only people who care about them are the beta testers, which hopefully you are because you're watching this. I mean, wouldn't you be in the beta? If you're not, go join it. And they updated the video helper binaries again because there's nothing more exciting than a broken YouTube video channel or YouTube video when you're watching them in the house because you're in VRChat. Why wouldn't you watch videos when you should be chatting with people? It doesn't matter. Yes, the avatar loading times are much faster. They corrected an issue with audio sources on avatars using custom curves that would ignore the world's far distance limit. So now you shouldn't hear those people that are 40 or 50 meters away. They should fade out properly. Small bugs from the last iteration of the audio, the total audio revamp. There's a card up there about it, hopefully, if I added it. We got optimized behaviors of physics syncing in some situations. I don't know what kind of physics VRChat does that aren't dynamic bones, actually. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, but the word says optimized. I expect a performance gain. Good luck on that one. Improved consistency between load bias, level of detail bias for desktop and VR clients. So what the issue with that was when you were in a world and they were using LODs, which, as you may or may not know, LODs have several levels of quality for one specific object. So that building right there might be, 30,000 polys when you're up close, 20,000 polys when you're medium distance away, and 10,000 polys when you're far away. The issue was that would be registered for desktop users and VR users, and even different, if I recall correctly, different headsets would have different LOD distances. So if you were trying to make, a forest actually look like a forest and not just like some sort of pixelized garbage, you would have a really hard time negotiating between how far away the LOD is actually supposed to be, so it doesn't look like pixelated garbage for some people, or, an empty area for other people. That was essentially the problem, because especially when people are using LODs to turn things on and off. Like, you don't need, more than 4 levels of trees, for example, in some cases. But if they don't load at the right time, you're just going to see right through the trees, and it'd just be a total nightmare for world builders. So that was fixed, and that's a huge fix. Now LODs actually function, so now people can use LODs properly, and when you use LODs, performance goes up. Stonks. What else do we got? We got various issues with the back button not working as expected. This happened to me a lot. I would open up the world menu, go to a community labs world, be like, wait a minute, I already was there, it was awful. Try to push the back button, and the back button would just tank my frames and actually not do anything. Now it's going to do something properly. So that's so much better than it was. Now it can actually go to more labs worlds faster and not take 4 days to make a video. Oh gosh, I haven't made a video this week. Okay. I should get on that. Fix the memory leak with VRC Panorama. Talked to a dev about this. Essentially, the long and short of this memory leak issue was that when you took a panorama, it would store it in memory, and it would not get rid of it. But then there's more. You would go to another world, it would load that panorama a second time. And the panoramas aren't small; they're like 5 megabytes or something like that, or maybe even more, like 30 megabytes. So these panoramas would just stack and stack and stack as you wandered through worlds. And I think if you took an additional panorama, it would just stack it on top of that one. So you would just get a big old stack of panoramas, and eventually you just get a full, your memory would get full and your VRChat would crash. So that was fixed. So now you can actually take panoramas without worrying about the memory leak. So cool. If we fix an issue, or VRChat fixed an issue with Quest where the terms of service would not properly load in rare situations. So now you can't not push agree. Sorry, you gotta, or just don't play, which means you're going to be pushing agree. So VRChat fixed an issue with ban messages not appearing for some users. So when you're banned, now you know. They fixed an issue where index controller wireframes would sometimes get stuck in one's hands, and you might have seen that in a couple videos that I made recently. And look, Ma, no index controllers. Fantastic. This excites me. They fixed an issue where bound sizes were incorrectly calculated if your Unity scale was not set to 1.0. So now if you made your avatar really small or really big and your bound sizes were blown up and you were very poor, but you didn't actually intend it to be that big, it was just, it was correct. Now it's actually going to be correct. So now you might not be very poor anymore, even though it doesn't matter because the new system doesn't even care about your bound size. So cool, very good. Further iteration on Network.k. Is it good yet? You tell me in the comments. There's still some issues, especially with the SDK. They totally did a SDK layout overhaul. All the GUI's all changed. The graphical user interface is all changed. The again now gives you more data when it's trying to tell you that something's wrong. In some cases, it'll tell you how to fix it, or it can actually fix it automatically, which is really cool. Especially when you have to do with like chairs and you just copied and pasted a whole bunch of chairs. You could like really confuse the networking with that. And now you can actually push fix now and it just rename the chairs appropriately, so your networking with the server doesn't get screwed up within the world. So that's one example of the many other things that they fixed in it. So world builders rejoice, it's much better than it was. There's still some known issues with the SDK, but don't worry about it too much. If you see an issue, jump on the canny, whatever Tupper called it. It's not the canny anymore. I don't know. Just go to the canny. SDK changes other than graphics. We've got VRC pickup now has text fields for interaction text and use text, which is better. Like interaction text appears when you hover over the pickup, right? So here's a pickup. You're getting near it. Interaction text, right? And then use text appears when an equipable object is equipped or grabbed, which I think is new, actually, because in the past, interaction and use were the same thing, if I recall correctly. If I recall correctly. But anyway, so now when you grab or equip something, you can have a text appear when that happens. We got a new scene descriptor. Well, the same scene descriptor. There's an update to it. The dynamic material properties are cleared and regenerated upon each scene build instead of building up on previous entries, which I believe is an actual fix and not just a cosmetic one, because it doesn't bring in dynamic materials into the world on upload, so you don't download as much stuff, if I recall. That sounds about right, but it might not be right. I'm not 100% on that. We removed the ability to change the API to beta. I believe that's cosmetic. It's not being used. So added drop-down toggles and a search field to the content manager panel, which is much better. Content manager panel is the panel where you have all of your avatars and all of your worlds in a nice list. Now you can actually search through that list and find your stuff when you have like 30 or 40 avatars and you're just looking for that specific one. Boom, much better. If spatialization is turned off for a spatial audio source, as we talked about last time, it will always use the audio source's curve. So essentially, the default stuff is loaded properly. Good, if you don't have it or if it's turned off. Auto spatialized audio sources is now deprecated and defaults to false because you don't need it anymore. We got a new audio system. We're still adding on to this audio system, which is freaking great. Less buttons I have to push, to be honest, the better. We also changed VRChat also changed the VRC chair prefab to use VRChat mobile diffuse shader by default. So now when you're placing chairs in the world, they are Oculus Quest ready. Sweet. And then you don't have to change it, so you don't have to get an error every time you try to upload it and being like, oh, your chairs are not compatible because things. They also added separate warnings and fixes for the Oculus spatial audio source conversion, and when no spatial audio source is present. Wait, what? Added separate warnings and fixes for ONSP. Doesn't matter. Skip that one. Added a check for 2D versus 3D audio, and uses that result to determine if they should enable spatialization at all, because sometimes you don't want your audio to be spatialized. You kind of want it to be two-dimensional, like if you're making a two-dimensional world, or you want all the music all the time and not music out of one ear or out of the other ear. So now it's a little bit more intelligent when it's trying to do things. Whole bunch of fixes, but we're not really going to go into the fixes because they're mostly SDK fixes about event handlers and VRC pickups and triggers targeting themselves. Doesn't sound like a very good thing, but I'm not exactly sure in these specific situations what exactly happened or what. So if you want to look at the specific fixes for the SDK, hit up the docs because there's a lot of them and it's all rather complicated. But yeah, but that's not all. They didn't just patch once, they patched twice because of that issue with the logs. And they fixed a bug causing issues with accessing the quick menu because I believe it would appear and disappear in rapid succession, and that would actually add more stuff to the logs, and it was a nightmare. So that was a really quick fix, and for some people, they didn't have to download a client update for that fix, just for the log one. So yeah. Oh, geez. Okay, that's it. That was a lot. That's a lot of trimming that has to be done. That was a lot. Okay, this is Sheeny Merst here. Time to go make another video about lab worlds. Great, can't wait. As you can hear, my throat's getting better, so thanks for everybody who was concerned. This is Sheeny Merst here. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Next patch, probably maybe September, maybe October. Hopefully there's good stuff. Maybe there's more emojis. I know you care about the emojis. Okay. Subscribe. Bye. Okay. I gotta turn this off.